Hello, this is the third part of History 231 Ancient Mediterranean World, section number 19, Rome and the Rise of Sasanid Persia. And we've already discussed in the previous two sections the Roman Empire during this time. And what I'd like to do now is start talking about the Sasanian Persian Empire. And this is an empire that doesn't get a lot of attention in typical history classes and oftentimes is passed over and ignored by historians. And it really shouldn't be, because the Sasanian Persians were actually really important, not just in the history of the Middle East, not just in the history of their relations with Rome, but in world history in general. So that's actually something we should spend a little time talking about, where these people come from and what they believe and so forth. So let's think about this now. The Parthians, you'll remember, the Persian Empire that the Romans were having to face, was a formidable enemy to Rome, but the Parthians are having problems by the 3rd century, 2nd and 3rd century AD. And what's happening, of course, is they are in decline. And Rome is very happy about that. Rome is perfectly happy having their big rival to the east be in decline, because that way Rome was safer. Its eastern frontier is more secure and so forth. But you should always be careful what you wish for, because when the Parthians go down, the Romans are going to be faced with an even bigger problem in their replacement, the Sasanians. And the Sasanians are going to be actually far more formidable and dangerous to Rome than the Parthians ever were. Now, the last king of the Parthians, who was really of note, they had others, but who was of note, was Vologases IV. He ruled from 148 to 191 AD, and he went back and forth with alliances and conflicts with the Romans. He made good relations with Antoninus Pius in 161, but the next thing you know, he's in war with Rome. This goes back and forth. This is fairly normal on Rome's eastern frontier and Parthia's western frontier. And so what we are finding, of course, is this constant back and forth, this constant back and forth struggle here. Now, this is an interesting time period, as I said, but the Parthians are definitely on the decline. Things are not going really, really well here. And we've seen how this was something the Romans attempted to take advantage of. The Emperor Caracalla, in fact, had been fighting against the Parthians when he made his terrible, horrible, awful mistake and went to the bathroom on the side of the road, and his own bodyguards cut him down. That is such an ironically sad way to die. But anyway, he was out of the picture. But he's just one example of these problems that the Romans are having on their eastern frontier. Now, in 224 AD, the Parthian king Artabanes IV was overthrown by a fellow named Ardashir. Now, Ardashir, you'll notice, gets a star. Ardashir is kind of a big deal. He rules from 224 to 241 AD, and he's overthrown. Who is Ardashir? All right, let's ask this question. Who is this guy? He's the ruler of a small state in the southern part of Iran called Persis, all right, in the southern province of Persis, all right. Now, keep in mind, Persis is interesting because you'll recognize the word Persis relating to the word Persia. And in fact, Persis was the same area that the old Achaemenid Persian kings had come from, the birthplace of the Achaemenid Persian Empire. And you better believe the people in Persis remembered that fact. They were aware of their own glorious history. And so when this guy from Persis says, hey, I'm going to be the new big shot, the new big emperor, and by 226 AD, he is crowned as King of Kings at a place called Ctesiphon. Okay, Ctesiphon, Ctesiphon, and that's going to become the capital of his empire, the Sasanian Persian Empire here, all right? And this is really interesting because this guy knew how to play the game. He was able to get the powerful noble families of Persia to switch their allegiance from the Parthians, who they had been backing, over to him, to Ardashir. And this tells us something about the society of ancient Persia. The society of ancient Persia was dominated by very large, very powerful noble families that had a great deal of wealth, power, and influence. And if you can get them on your side, you can become king of the whole enchilada. And this is what he does. This is what our friend Ardashir does. He makes this switch. He gets them to switch over to him. All right? And this begins the Sasanian or the Sasanid Empire. The Sasanian or Sassanid Empire. Now, of course, this is going to be very interesting, right? Keep in mind, lineage is important to these people. Who are your ancestors? This is going to be a big deal. The actual founder of the dynasty here is a guy named Sasan, S-A-S-S-A-N here, and that is the name of it. Now, let's talk a bit about this empire, the Sasanian Persian Empire here. They are what we call extreme nationalists, all right? Extreme nationalists. Let's review a bit. What is a nationalist and what is a patriot? Well, think about it this way. A patriot is someone who loves their own country. All right? So I safely can say I'm an American patriot. I love America. For all its failings and all its problems, I'm very fond of this country. I really am. And so I consider myself very patriotic. I like the flag. I like to be, celebrating the history of America. I'm a very fond guy. I'm very fond of America. So I'm a patriotic American. I think. I'd like to think so in any event. There's a difference, however, between a patriot and a nationalist, because a patriot loves their own country. So if you're a Norwegian patriot, you'll love Norway. If you are a Canadian patriot, you'll love Canada, etc. A nationalist loves their own country. Sure, that's all very fine and well, but they also hate everybody else's. So if you are a patriot, you say, I love my country. If you're a nationalist, you say, I love my country and your country sucks. That's a nationalist. And that's how you tell the difference between the two. And of course, the problem is nationalists, well, they piss everybody off. If you're not part of their group, you're a bad guy. Well, the Sasanian Persians were nationalist Persians. That means that their country, Sasanian Persia, was not only the best, but everybody else sucked. The Romans sucked. They weren't as cool as the Sasanian Persians. And this meant the Sasanians felt it was totally okay to go and punch the Romans in the nose or anybody else. And this is a really big difference between them and the old Achaemenid Persians that we saw with guys like Darius and Xerxes and Cyrus. Those guys were not nationalists, they were patriots. And there's a difference. There's a big difference here. So that's something to keep in mind. And they did something else, the Sasanian Persians. They made Zoroastrianism into the state religion of their empire. Now, what exactly is a state religion? A state religion is when a government decides that it's going to support and throw its weight, economic and political weight, behind a particular religion, whatever that religion happens to be. Now, in the United States, we don't have a state religion. The Founding Fathers very wisely said, First Amendment to the Constitution says no state religion in America, which means you can worship whichever religion you want as long as you're not messing with anybody else. As long as you don't sacrifice other people to your god or something crazy like that, you can pretty much worship the way you want to. If you want to worship the great green spaghetti monster, you can do that in America because we have no state religion. The First Amendment to the Constitution says that. No state religion. Okay, fine. Other countries, like say Saudi Arabia, do have a state religion. In Saudi Arabia, you cannot be a Saudi citizen unless you're a Muslim. All right, so this is an interesting difference. And our Founding Fathers, looking at history, wisely, I think, decided we're going to just let everyone pick their own as long as they don't impede anybody else's rights. Okay? And I think that's a very reasonable position to take. Well, the Sasanian Persians would not agree. What they said was Zoroastrianism is the state religion, and that means you have to be a Zoroastrian or you're in trouble. Now, here's the other thing, though. What kind of Zoroastrian do you have to be? This is the problem with state religions, because it's not enough to just say, okay, our state religion is Christianity, you've got to be a Christian. Which kind of Christian? Catholic, Protestant, Mormon, Jehovah's Witness? There's all sorts of different kinds of religions, all sorts of different kinds of Christians. And so, hey, which one are you? Which one are you supposed to be? That's the trouble with state religions. They mix politics and religion, and those two are like oil and water. They don't mix very well. It's a really serious problem. So the Sasanian Persians are saying Zoroastrianism is a state religion, but it's got to be the right kind of Zoroastrianism. And if you don't worship the right way, you're doing it wrong, and you are what is called a heretic. Now, a heretic is the opposite of an Orthodox person. An Orthodox person believes in the standard Orthodox, correct, in quotes, way of worshiping. All right, that's the Orthodox. A heretic is someone who is part of the same religion, in this case Zoroastrianism, but it could be any religion, and that heretic is a part of this religion, but they're worshiping wrong, incorrectly. So if you're doing Zoroastrianism wrong, you're a heretic and you're bad. Now, an unbeliever is someone from a totally different religion. So during this same time, we're going to see the Christians in the Sasanian Persian Empire were unbelievers. They're not Zoroastrians at all, so they're unbelievers. And what the Sasanian Persians basically did is they said, hey man, you got to be a Zoroastrian our way, or you're wrong, and we're going to get mad at you. Now, this depended a little bit on the king. Some Sasanian Persian kings were more tolerant than others, and the more tolerant ones said, listen, we're just going to live and let live. If you want to do it differently, that's okay. All right? But others were not so tolerant, and they were sometimes influenced by very powerful priests in the Zoroastrian church, and these guys said it's our way or the highway. All right? And there's two of them that I've given stars to that I'd like to spend a little bit of time talking about down the road here. So Ardashir gains power in Persia. He invades Mesopotamia. He conquers, etc., etc., etc. All right? And this is something that we find. All right? There are various and sundry kings, and this is one of the things to be careful of. There are multiple kings, two kings in particular, who are named Shapur. You'll notice that only Shapur II gets a star, even though Shapur I was quite important too, because of course if I give too many Shapur stars, it's all going to get very, very confusing. But Shapur I, of course, fights with the Romans. He pushes back hard against the Romans, invades Armenia, he seizes Antioch, he does all sorts of things like this. All right? And this, of course, is going to be a real serious problem for the Romans because timing is everything. At exactly the time the Roman Empire is starting to fall apart, and it almost did at this point, it almost did, the Sasanian Persians are on the upswing. So very bad timing for the poor Romans here. All right? But this is something that we find as well. So, Zoroastrianism. Zoroastrianism as a state religion. This is a new development that happens in the Sasanian Persian Empire. It's also going to happen with a different religion in Rome, as we will see next time. But for now, let's talk about what happens in the Sasanian Persian Empire here. Zoroastrianism, like all religions, must evolve or die. That is the way religions work. There are no exceptions. There are either living religions that evolve, dead religions that don't. And that's just the way it is. So Zoroastrianism is going to be evolving here. It's going to be evolving. And here's the problem. Here's the problem. Ardashir is a Zoroastrian. He's a very fervent Zoroastrian. And in order to come to power, he had to kill other Zoroastrians, namely the Parthians, who were also Zoroastrians. So you got this Zoroastrian killing that Zoroastrian. This is not very nice. This doesn't sound like Asha. This sounds more like Drug. And of course, in Zoroastrianism, you have Asha, which is goodness, and Drug, which is badness, and you're supposed to do more Asha than Drug. But now you're killing your fellow Zoroastrians? That sounds like you're a druggie. Pardon the pun. So this is a really interesting question. So how does Ardashir justify his actions against his fellow Zoroastrians? Well, he does it in a very interesting way, and he's got some help. And his help comes from a guy named Tansar. All right? And old Tansar gives us a very interesting perspective on this. All right? He's the main priest for our friend Ardashir. He's an energetic guy, and he is a, how do I put this nicely, a religious fanatic. Zoroastrianism is the only right way to do it. My way or the highway, that's it. You do it wrong, and big trouble for you. So, Tansar has a problem because a number of powerful families, these powerful noble families in Persia, the guys who are really the power brokers in Persia, are not so keen on this Zoroastrian guy Ardashir killing another Zoroastrian guy, the Parthians. And they're not happy about this. And we actually have a letter. Now, we don't know if this letter is actually contemporaneous or later, but it's a very interesting letter nonetheless because it shows us the thinking that seems to be going on at this time. And here's the way it works here. Tansar says we need to get the nobility, the powerful noble families of Persia on our side and away from the Parthians. And the way we're going to do this is convince them that we're better than those Parthian guys, right? And so here's what we have. A letter written to Tansar, or written by Tansar, by Tansar to a guy named Gushnasp. Don't you just love these names? So anyway, our friend Gushnasp says, hey, I'm not so happy. You guys are killing Zoroastrians. What's going on? This is not so cool. And, you know, what our friend Tansar says is very telling. He doesn't deny it. He doesn't say, no, we didn't kill those people. He says, sure, yeah, we did. You're absolutely right, we did. We killed those people, but we had a good reason to do it. Yes, we did. We had a very good reason to do it. And here's the reason here, all right? Not all the things that the Parthians were doing were okay. They were drug. They were bad. They were bad because they were not worshiping Ahura Mazda correctly here, all right? Correctly. And this is a really important point. If you can convince this guy that, hey, those other Parthians, they're not doing it right, that means maybe they're bad, and maybe they should get overthrown. Maybe you should actually kick them out here. Maybe we should actually kick them out. So he doesn't deny that his guy, which is our friend Ardashir, is killing people and killing Zoroastrians. He doesn't deny it at all. He says, but they had to do it because those Zoroastrians were bad. This was a bad thing, so we had to fix all this. And this is a really interesting kind of thing here, all right? And let me read you one of his quotes here. And I quote, "His Majesty, the King of Kings, Ardashir, son of Papak, following Tansar as his religious authority, commanded all those scattered teachings to be brought to court. Tansar set about his business and selected one tradition and left the rest out of the canon. And he issued his decree, quote, 'The interpretation of all the teachings of the Mazda worshipping religion is our responsibility, for now there is no lack of certain knowledge concerning them,' end quote." In other words, what he's done is he's collected all these people and he's asked them, how do you be a good Zoroastrian? And he said, I've come up with the answer. I've come up with the orthodoxy. I've come up with the right way to be a good Zoroastrian. Me. And all the other Zoroastrians are doing it wrong. They're heretics. I'm Orthodox. So what he's doing in this quote, what he's saying in this quote, is he's establishing, as he says, one tradition and left the rest out of the canon. Now, what is a canon? Well, there's the canon that goes boom. And then there's a canon with one N, which is the standard correct version of something. And canon can be in anything, right? It can be in a sacred book like the Bible or the Quran or something like that. It can also be the correct Star Trek episodes. Pick anything. You can have a canon and you can have a non-canonical part of this, right? There are Star Trek episodes that have Captain Kirk and Mr. Spock and Dr. McCoy, and they're canon according to Star Trek fans. They are the correct. They really happened in the Star Trek universe. And then there are non-canonical things. We call that fan fiction. They're not part of the official correct, in quotes, Star Trek universe. This is no different. What our friend Tansar is doing is he's saying, I get to decide what's real Zoroastrianism and what's not. And whatever is not means you're a heretic. You may be a Zoroastrian, but you're a heretic. And that's a really important development because it's not something we ever saw with the old Achaemenid Persians. They didn't talk like this, all right? So this is a really important point. And what he says is this: we can't have peace until we have religious unity. We cannot have peace until we have religious unity. And guess who's going to provide that? Yes, our good friend Ardashir, the Sasanid. And this is going to be a very important point because this evolution is a fairly new thing in religion. And it can lead to things like religious intolerance. My religion is right, your religion is wrong. My version of the religion is right, your version of the religion is wrong. And unfortunately, that can lead to violence. It can lead to things that today we see crusades and jihads and problems like this, which cause all sorts of misery. All right. So this is something that we start to see here. There is a correct way and an incorrect way to do all of this sort of thing. All right? So this is what we start to see. Sacred fires, which are the centerpiece of Zoroastrian places of worship, start to be set up all over the empire. We start to see all sorts of things happening under the Sasanians. They really are big into their religion here. Now the second figure is Kirdir. Let's talk a little bit about him. He's a little bit later. Okay? He's a little bit later. But he's interesting because we actually have a picture of him carved onto a cliff wall. He's the only person from the Sasanian Empire, other than a king, to have ever done this. So this guy had a lot of influence here. So our friend Mr. Kirdir actually has his own picture here. And Kirdir is very, very much a my way or the highway Orthodox Zoroastrian. There's only my way to do it, and if you don't do it my way, you're a bad person, and blah, 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 and I'm going to persecute you. Right? And this is what he does. He pushes this idea here, right? He pushes this idea that there is only one correct way to do it. And that means if you don't do Zoroastrianism right, you're a heretic and you're in big trouble. Now, one of the most important heretics that he hates, and our friend really does, Kirdir hates this guy with a passion of 1,000 suns, he really does, is a fellow named Mani. And Mani is the founder of a religion called Manichaeanism. And Manichaeanism is sort of like Zoroastrianism, but not. So to the guy like Tansar and Kirdir, he's a heretic. Oh my gosh, is he bad? We don't like him at all. But Mani is a very interesting figure, and he's one of the most important religious figures in the history of the world. And I'm not exaggerating when I say that. He's a hugely important figure. His impact on other religions, including Christianity, is profound. as we will see. So that's going to be an interesting sort of question. So our friend Kildare sees Mani, and he gets really upset with him. And that's a nice cliffhanger, because next time I'll tell you exactly what Mani said and why Kildare got so very angry. But it's going to be messy. So anyway, stay tuned.